Bitcoin still does what it does now, which is it's fucking inert and dumb. It doesn't do anything and it's still slow and shitty. And I think everyone in the world will be like, Bitcoin, like, oh yeah, it's like the boomer coin. Like, I don't know, it doesn't do anything. I believe we'll be in a state of the world 5, 6, 7 years from now in which everyone will understand. I think it will be Solana will be powering the substantial majority of these global financial transactions. And if we are in the state of the world in which that is generally common knowledge, then I expect Sol will be the number one asset in that state of the world. Clearly, Bitcoin is a non-sovereign store of value. That's not really a question because it, quite frankly, is nothing. Like, there's no way to explain $1 trillion of market cap in Bitcoin. I've never even seen another plausible explanation for that. No, that's a different question. Then, is that a good thesis or good theory? I would contend the answer to that is no, it is not. But like, clearly, a lot of people believe in it and put their money where their mouth is. I think the mechanics, I think the way people talk about moneyness is mostly incorrect. The traditional view of moneyness as espoused by the Bitcoin people is based on a fairly simple set of criteria. Most importantly, the supply schedule. In Bitcoin's case, obviously, famously, is 21 million. It also includes a few other parameters. Can you validate the block at home? That's a very Bitcoin-centric statement, but like, sure, I can see how that lends itself, quote unquote, towards being money, although I think that's basically nonsense. Censorship resistance, I think, is like, if you're going to claim to be non-sovereign money, I do think you need to have a credible claim to censorship resistance. People say Bitcoin's the most censorship resistant of the major chains today. I don't think that statement is meaningfully true. Yeah, I mean, the mining pools, like what, 4 mining pools or something, they get you to 51%. And just generally the number of mining pools is fairly limited, and that just really skews Bitcoin's economic and censorability in pretty negative ways. So it's just obviously like kind of crappy in those dimensions. But like where Bitcoin shines, supply schedule, 21 million, like no questions asked. It is the most predictable asset in human history on that dimension. Where I think the money people have gone wrong is they overemphasize that one dimension at the expense of all of the others. And like, yes, look, Bitcoin provides 9 nines of probability around the supply schedule as we approach 21 million in the year 2140 or whatever it is. But like, dude, like 9 nines and 3 nines, like, I don't think that matters. And so that to me is like a major point where I diverge from everyone else. Ethereum people, I think very stupidly leaned into the same basic framing and said, well, yeah, our money's programmable, like, great, sure. But ultrasound money, deflationary, aha, we got you. Bitcoin, we outdid you at your own game. And I think that was just like a very stupid thing to do because I think it like, yeah, you're focusing on the thing that like, even if you are correct that ETH stays perpetually deflationary, like you can't prove that it will be deflationary.
Right.
And so there's fundamentally, right,
It is
it's not a
not
predictable
predictable.
supply schedule. And so like, it's like a too smart by half. I'm like, nah, dude, like the point of the 21 million is that it's knowable ahead of time, which it is fundamentally not for Ethereum. So I think that they like pick the wrong variable and then pick the losing argument for the wrong variable. And then I look at Solana. Look, I'll be the first person to tell you I don't think Sol is money or whatever. But like, since Sol is obviously comparable to ETH and Bitcoin as like a L1 asset, let's at least continue this framing for the purposes of Sol. I wrote a blog post in 2018. I think it was called Path to Tens of Trillions or something to that effect. And in it, I laid out what I called the utility thesis of money, which is the one of these systems that becomes the most widely used will be the one that like its native asset becomes money.
Yeah.
And to me, coming back to the original framing of like censorship resistance, usability, I see a world pretty clearly, in 3 years, I think Sol is substantially more censorship resistant in a world of multiple concurrent block producers than Bitcoin ever can possibly hope to be, or that even Ethereum, at least based on my current understanding of the roadmap, could hope to be. The programmable part, obviously Bitcoin is not even relevant. If we're in a world 3 or 4 years from now in which the Solana blockchain mainnet has 20, 30, 40, 50 concurrent block producers, that's my base case. That is just objectively way more censorship resistant than a system with a single leader. Because now if like you send it to the guy and the guy says no, it's like, fine, just like go to the next guy. You got 30 others to choose from who are block building now. And presumably in the next 1 or 2 seconds, that's going to rotate anyways. And then obviously there's like latency of like, hey, I don't have to go across the Pacific Ocean to like get to the leader. I can like, there's a guy, presumably within a few hundred miles of me. And then there's the framework part. But I think like the system that ultimately powers the most economic activity, which again, at this point, my base case is Solana, that will be the one that most people will be like, oh, okay, this is the one. Like fast forward 5, 6 years from now, let's assume at least 500 million DAUs of like some combination of these chains, whether it's Ethereum, Solana, Sui, Aptos, whatever. The default perception will be Bitcoin and Solana look kind of the same to me. They're both called a crypto. They both kind of use this cryptography thing. I don't really know how it works. They both have these funny long addresses that I can't fucking read. They both move money around clearly. And like Solana powers all the useful stuff and Bitcoin does not. You know, at some point, whether it's in 4 years or in 9 years, we'll be at a point at which everyone in the world generally understands that to be true. And in that state of the world, I don't understand why like Sol is not flipped Bitcoin.